Hello, welcome back to the Lounge with Annette, and welcome to the book that I decided to read for the month of July. Which book is it? It's this book here. Well, I got a lot of people who said that they liked this book, so I'm just gonna go with it. And I've already read chapter one, so I'm not going to reread it. So I'm going to start off with chapter two. And if there are any new people who are watching me, I normally read a chapter or two a day, one released at 3:30 and one possibly released at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. But don't hold me to that. It all depends on how long the chapters are and how good the book is. Also, I'm not good with a lot of words. I'm not a professional reader. I am going to stumble over some words. And when it comes to me not knowing the words, after I read the chapter, there will be a definition video with the word on the screen to show you what word I was trying to pronounce. And then I will provide a definition video of it for if there's anybody else who don't know what word I was trying to say. And if that happens in the chapter, I'll, for an example, say chapter 2 with the letter D on it so you can know that that particular chapter has a definition video. Okay, and anything else I need to say for the new people? I think that's about it. If there's any content that I need to warn you about, it'll also be a warning of the content. Okay, so are you ready? Chapter 2. When Etta woke up, her mind was fuzzy and unclear. It made no sense, but she seemed to be standing in a church. It was crudely built, looking like it had been slapped together in a weekend. There were rough pews to her right. When she had trouble turning her head, she realized that she wasn't fully awake, so she must be dreaming. There was something very tight around her middle. The bed covers? She heard a voice she recognized and looked toward it. It was her father. He had on an old-fashioned dark suit with a black string tie. With her gone, had he started doing cosplay? He should have let her get the suit clean. It was wrinkled and dirty. He was angrily glaring at Etta, not something he'd ever done before. "Do you or not?" he snapped. "Do I what?" she asked. "I don't think—" "Those are the words," he said. "You're married. Now get out of here." He turned and walked away. Bewildered, Etta watched him leave. Married? What does that mean? When someone took her left hand, she was startled and looked down at it. A male hand had slipped a gold ring onto her finger. It seemed to go on very slowly. I bet Henry's questions about why I'm not married made me dream this, she thought. When the ring was on, she looked up into the dark eyes of the gorgeous man. Not Vogue pretty, but rugged. Unshaved, whiskers, square jaw, skin that showed he never used sunscreen. The hand holding hers was rough as sandpaper, the palm one with big calluses. He too was wearing an old-fashioned suit. "Congratulations, boss," said a man to the side. He was smaller and he smelled like sweating horses. Like her father, he was doing cosplay and wearing clothes from a Hollywood Western. This dream is certainly realistic. The taller man, the boss, her so-called husband, moved away from her. 3 men, smelly and dirty, surrounded her. They were laughing and congratulating him as they took turns signing a piece of paper on a little table. The boss stepped back, looked at Etta, and held up a pen. It was still, and there was a bottle of ink she was to dip it into. "What? No rollerball?" she asked. The 4 men stared at her in silent confusion. I certainly dream authentically, she thought. When she took a step forward, she almost fell. Heaven help her, but she had on a skirt that nearly touched the floor. How was she supposed to walk in this thing? The men were watching her, so she grabbed the front and walked with all grace she could muster. She made it to the table. The paper said marriage license at the top. Henrietta Lily Wilmot to Maxwell James Lawton. Etta started to refuse to sign, but it was a dream, so what did it matter? She signed and stepped back. So now I'm a married woman? She was beginning to think her dream was hilarious. She couldn't wait to tell Henry. Her unconscious had combined his books and questions into the most vivid dream anyone had ever had. Too late to change your mind now, one of the men said. He really should take a shower, she thought. And who dreams with smells? You got the worst man, the second one said to Etta. He'll put you to work at dawn, won't let up until the moon shines bright. Then the real work begins, the third one said, and they all snickered like pubescent boys. Out, the tall man ordered. I want that fence repaired by sundown. The men backed toward the open door with leering grins on their dirty faces. Just sundown, boss? I could last longer than that. That's not what Frida says. The three men fell into loud laughter, then scurried out the door as the man took a menacing step toward them. I apologize for them, he said. Etta just blinked at him. What an odd dream. She would have put money on it that if she made up a marriage dream, it would be with a man who was madly, passionately, insanely in love with her. Except for when this man put the ring on her finger, he stayed several feet away. And now he was looking at her as though sizing her up. There was certainly no love in his eyes. There wasn't even familiarity. It was like he never met her before. Ready? He asked as he picked up an old leather hat off a pew and put it on. Sure, she said. She was gradually becoming more awake, or more, she wasn't sure awake was the right description for a dream, more aware of her surroundings. When she again tripped, she looked down at what she was wearing, a long, heavy, dark skirt. The top was as tight as a sausage casing, but there was a little lace jacket over it. While the outfit was heavy and cumbersome, what was really awful was what she could feel under it. Only a corset could be that tight. Had someone used a tire iron to pull the laces together? As she took a breath, she put her hands at her waist. To her astonishment, her hands weren't far from being able to encircle her waist, which was now teeny tiny. Yes, she was in pain, but the corset had achieved what years of going to the gym hadn't been able to do. She looked up at the man, her eyes wide. Maybe he saw some of what she was feeling because he gave her a little half smile. They left the church, and at the door, Etta paused. In front of them was a wide street that was paved, if you could call it that, with horse manure, mud, corn cobs, trampled rubbish, and she didn't want to think about what else. On each side were wooden buildings, excuse me, that looked like a fire waiting to happen. Barbershops, saloons, lively stable, saloon. I guess people here like to drink, she said. He cocked his head toward her but didn't reply. To the side was a beat-up old flatbed wagon harnessed to two horses. In the back were a couple of trunks. One of them looked like the one from the foot of Ben's bed. She was incorporating what she'd seen into her dreams. All there? He asked. She guessed he meant those were her trunks. Wonder what I packed, she nodded. They went down the steps and Etta managed to not get entangled in her skirt as she walked to the wagon. She stood there looking at it. How in the world did she get up into it? Her foot went where? Hands where? As she prepared for the climb, she slipped out of the lace shrugs. It was too pretty and fragile for wearing in a wooden wagon. The man was behind her. He took the little jacket, lifted the lid on one of the trunks, and carefully laid it inside. Etta looked back at the wagon that seemed to be impossible to reach. Oh, she said as the man suddenly put his hands on her little waist, lifted her like she was a child, and set her in front. Usually, a man wouldn't even open the door for me. she muttered. He must have heard her because as he got into the other side, he gave a smile that was a tiny bit wider than before. He reached in the back and pulled out a roll of canvas. This is a wedding gift from Alice. She started to ask who Alice was, but he seemed to think she knew. She unrolled the cloth. Inside was an umbrella. Correction, a parasol. That was so beautiful, Etta could hardly catch her breath. The panels on the wire frame was ivory silk, and the edges were embroidered with tiny blue flowers with green leaves. Cascading from the center were strings of matching flowers. Obviously, it had all been done by hand. It's beautiful, she whispered. For a moment, his face seemed to melt from tough to fragile. I'll tell my sister you think so. His vulnerable look was gone, but it had been there long enough for her to see that he loved his sister. She liked that he had family he cared about. She wrapped the parasol back up and put it in the foot trough. His face went back to the inscrutable look he'd been wearing. He untied the reins and snapped them to make the horse go. It took only a few feet before Etta realized that riding on a hard wooden seat down a rutted road wasn't like on TV. She was tossed to one side, then bounced up and down. If it weren't for what felt like half a dozen slips under her skirt, her backside would be one big bruise. He looked at her. Are you all right? Comfy. Her teeth clicked together as they went over a pile of fresh horse manure that was on top of old manure. Nothing like a sweet summer's day. She took a breath, then coughed at the smell. Again, he gave a bit of a smile. Etta grinned broadly. Her family in Leicester were so used to her jokes that they paid little attention to them. So it was nice to find someone who appreciated them. This part of the dream makes sense, she thought. Of course, she would put in someone who liked her sense of humor. Suddenly, a woman walked in front of the wagon. She didn't look at it, much less give the horse and wagon the right of way. The man pulled back hard on the reins and the horses did the best they could to halt. But their 8 skinny legs twisted around together and they nearly went down. The man stood up trying to calm the horses and guide them. At the jolting, Etta started to fly forward, but the man grabbed her upper arm. He had reins in one hand, Etta held by the other one. When she came down, she hit the seat so hard, her teeth rattled, and she thought she might have cracked her tailbone. The woman in the road never so much as looked up. Damn you, Martha, he yelled. You could have been killed. She kept walking, but turned her head to give him a look of disdain. You should learn how to drive. As the man sat back down, he turned to Etta. Are you all right? She nodded as she stared at the woman. Etta had seen a dozen photos of her. Martha Logan. No, it's Martha Garrett. He snapped the reins to go again. Same name as this town. Does she own it? Her husband did, but after they died, she didn't have much property left. They? Her husband and son were killed in the war. Etta wasn't sure which war he meant, but it couldn't be one of the two world wars. It must be North and South. What other war is there? He answered, giving her a look of shock. Henry and Ben, she said. Who are they? Martha's husband and son. Her husband was Theodore. I don't know the boy's name. As they slowly rolled down the filthy, fragrant street, Etta looked at the building and the people. Oh, for a cell phone to photograph it all. If it were real, that is. When he halted to let another wagon go by, Etta looked at one of the saloons. Girls and beers. She read the sign aloud. That's about covers the desire of the entire world. When he full out grinned, she was pleased. Getting him to smile was becoming a goal for her. The door to the saloon swung open and 2 women came out. One had a broom and the other had a low-cut red dress and a lot of rouge. Etta's eyes widened. That's Sophia and Freddie. Sally and Frida, the man corrected her. Not your sort. You mean she's a sex worker, so I'm supposed to snub her? Not in my dream, Freddie, she called out and waved. And Sophia, it's good to see you two again. The women looked at her in shock. Freddie raised her hand in a weak wave of hello, while Sophie just stared. As the wagon started again, Etta turned in her seat. Can you sing? She asked Sophie and received a court nod. She looked at Freddie. And you like vegetables and gardening. Frida's eyes widened as she nodded. Etta turned around, her smile broad. It's always nice to see friends. The man wasn't smiling. I don't think those two can be my what? Even to herself, she sounded aggressive. Not my friends because they're not suitable. They're beneath my class. He gave her the oddest look, as though she were an alien being. Sorry, she muttered. Where I come from, things are different. People are equal. We don't look down on how someone makes a living. I'm sure Freddie does what she has to do to survive. Your home must be a very different place, he muttered, frowning. They rode in silence, and the air between them was heavy. It's my dream, Etta thought. So why would I embarrass myself in my very own made-up dream? It was as they reached the end of the long street that a woman rode up on a truly magnificent horse, big, black, shining. The woman was also magnificent. Etta had begun to think that her dream consisted only of people who didn't know what clean meant. But then there was this woman. She was covered neck to feet in dark green wool. Had Etta read about such a garment in one of Henry's books, it would have sounded modest, but the way it fit was anything but. It was as sexy as lingerie in an underwear catalog. When she halted her prancing horse on Etta's side of the wagon, she smiled in recognition. It was Ben's wife, Caroline, the firecracker, the woman who adored Henry and had designed the guest house for him. Hello, Etta said enthusiastically. She ignored Etta. Her eyes were on the man. Is it true? She demanded. His mouth was a hard line. This is my wife. Yes. She gave a rather remarkable sneer. Is this what you wanted? Old and plain? That's not very nice, Etta said. Carolyn still didn't look at her. You would do this to me? After all we've done together? Her meaning was clear. Bedroom antics. You're a bastard, and I hope you get what you deserve. In fact, I'm going to see that you do. Etta knew women scorn rage when she heard it, and she knew Carolyn was going to lash out. She was going to strike at him with her long riding crop, but Etta was between them. The man also knew what was about to happen. He pushed Etta down out of striking range. Her head hit her knees. At her feet was the wrapping parasol, and she grabbed it. Unfortunately, the wrapping fell off. Etta sat up, the closed parasol extended, and the whip hit it instead of him. The look of rage on Carolyn's face was enough to cause thunder to crash. This isn't over, she yelled as she rode away, causing manure and sawdust and mud to hit the wagon and its occupants. When the air cleared, he was looking at Etta in disbelief. Oh, girlfriend, she asked with exaggerated calm. He gave what was almost a laugh and set the horses to moving. Etta looked at the parasol. One of the silk panels had a cut in it. Oh no, something so beautiful to be ruined was a catastrophe. Alice can fix it, he said softly. Nodding, she wrapped it back up and put it down. They left the stinking town and were on flat ground where the path was relatively clean. He stopped the wagon and took a moment before he spoke. I know you want to meet Alice, but maybe you and I could... We could what? She asked while thinking. Have I conjured a dream with a wedding night in it? She wasn't displeased at the idea. Thank you for what you did with Cornelia. She probably wouldn't have hit you. He leaned forward and took off his hat. His dark hair was long, not Wild Bill Hickok long, but a little longer than dumber old Custer's. He turned so she could see his left ear. His earlobe was crooked. It looked like it had been mostly torn off, then sewn back on by a 6-year-old. Was the doctor drunk? She asked. He gave a full-fledged smile. As a matter of fact, he was. You should have let Martha do it. Martha Garrett? He said in horror as he put his hat back on. She would have yanked it all the way off and said it was a useless body part. Etta didn't smile. But if you became a pirate, you'd need it for an earring. He grinned at her. You're not like I thought you would be. Is that good or bad? Oh, very good. His eyes were sparkling. When he looked at her like that, she thought, sex dream. Oh, please. I want a sex dream. I'd like to show you something and explain a few things. Think you could stand my company for a few hours? I do. They smiled together, and she thought, those are the 2 words that started all this. He picked up the reins, and they rode in silence for a while. Who was the pastor? That's Tobias. He sounded grim. Is he a good minister? The worst. His sermons are a misery to hear. We built him a church, but that didn't help. Wonder why he became a pastor. His father made him. She looked at him. 3 shots of whiskey and he won't stop talking. Etta understood. Her grandfather was a man who was sure he knew how everyone should live. He'd want Etta to be a lawyer. No one was less suited for that profession than she was. She wanted people to like her. As they went across the undulated grassland, Etta felt sure they were in Kansas. She didn't want to question him and make herself seem stranger than he already thought she was. Where are we? Or what year is it? We're as bad as what war was it? He halted near a narrow, shallow river. There were pretty cottonwood trees along the side. It was a beautiful sight. This is nice. I always thought so. He nodded towards a small hill nearby. There appeared to be a door in it. That's where I grew up. He hesitated. Would you like to see it? Very much so. He got down and Etta tried to figure out how to do the same, but the wagon was so high off the ground. Besides, she had on what felt like 150 pounds of clothing, but he came around to her side and held up his arms. Great, she thought, and sort of fell forward like a toddler playing catch me. He swung her about, set her on the ground, then headed toward the door. It was a house that was partially dug back into the hill, which extended walls made out of hard blocks of dirt. As she looked around, he told her about elephant grass and plowing under it and how the pioneers had made the sod houses. She was more interested in the interior. It was one big room with a bed in the back corner. There was a fireplace and an iron stove with 2 burners on top. There was even a little oven. The walls were coated in plaster that had been dyed pale blue. There was a nice oak table and chairs. As he talked, she opened a couple of wall cabinets. Inside were canned goods, rice and flour and other food. Yes, she could make a meal with these. The place was quite clean and looked like it was still being used. Is this your man cave? He stopped his history lecture. My what? Your place to get away by yourself, to escape all things female. He looked pleased at her perception. It is. Not even Alice knows that I keep the old homestead up. Would you like some peaches? She seen the cans. I'd love some. She watched as he opened 2 cans with a big knife, handed her one and a spoon. You want to go outside? She followed him to the river. They sat on the grass looking toward the water. Etta loved the peaches. They weren't like 21st century canned fruit that was in heavy syrup or syrup of sugar. They tasted more like peaches you pull off a tree. I guess I should explain about Cornelia, if you want to. My father came to America from Italy, and he was a good worker. He was ambitious and determined to succeed. He did without so he could buy more and more land. Maybe that's why he and my mother died so young. And left you in charge of property and your sister? Yes. He paused. John Kicklin, Cornelia's father, owns the land on 3 sides of what my father left me. The Kicklin wants to own all of Kansas, and he wants me to help him buy it. But most of all, he wants the land my father gave his life to get. The problem is that I refuse to sell it to him. She thought about what he was saying. I see. It's like in the Middle Ages, if you marry his daughter, Mr. Kecklin gets all the land. Alice said you were smart. He paused for a moment. She loved writing to you. I would have done some of it myself, but I have trouble with that. Sometimes letters look backwards to me. I have less trouble with numbers, but there aren't as many of them. His eyes brightened. But she read all your letters to me. I know about your father, your sister, and her husband, and your niece. And I know you've had 2 years of university. Alice loves that. She reads all the time. And she sews. What else does she do? It was a simple question, but he took a while to answer. It looks like she didn't tell you. Alice is crippled. She doesn't leave home much. Cornelia made a place for her, and Alice stays there. Made a place for her? What does that mean? No, I think I understand. Like Caroline, Cornelia designed it. Yes, Cornelia drew out a glass room for Alice so she can see the outside. Then I built it. Etta was putting this information together. If Cornelia knew his sister so well as to design a place for her, there must have been a strong connection. How serious was it between you two? Just flirting or a ring and wedding plans? He ducked his head in a way that told her they were practically up the aisle. You weren't by chance the one who broke it off, were you? Afraid so. She nodded. What made you do it? One day I was doing the accounts, so that meant I was thinking about something other than her. And she was horrible to me. What a crime. You deserved it. He looked at her as though trying to figure out if she was serious, but then realized she was kidding. His laughter was a nice sound. You know, I think I like you. I didn't think I would. An old spinster with all the schooling. I never thought you'd have a sense of humor. Again with the old, she thought. Maybe this was her payback for telling Henry that her life was already set. So you married an old woman just to spite Cornelia? This was a dream, but really, a girl needed to have some pride. He didn't seem to realize that he said something wrong. I had to break my tie with her and her father. I couldn't have stood a life under the rule of John Kecklin. So you decided to get married to someone else. It seemed the best way to solve the problem. He again looked her up and down in that appraising way. There were several other choices, but I like that you took care of your sick mother, and Alice wanted someone educated. He shrugged. It all fit. I'm a mail-order bride, she thought. Romantic sounding, but not in this case. He married her to be a nurse for his sister and to protect himself from some medieval marriage. It was hard to believe, but she'd given herself a dream of a pity marriage. She hadn't betrayed herself. You could have hired someone. I've tried that, but women are at a premium here. Old, young, dumb, smart, it doesn't matter. They get married as soon as they get off the train. I've hired 4 of them, and they never lasted longer than a few months. One of them married my head wrangler. He sounded outraged. Maybe my wedding gift should have been a mop and a bucket. He seemed to understand that she was saying something bad, but he didn't get it. The parasol was Allison's gift. Mine is this. He waved his hand to indicate the land around them. I'll give you 20 acres of land, including part of the river. And if you stay for a year, I'll build you a house. Alice says that every woman needs a place that is just hers. He smiled. It would be a woman cave for you. The anger she started to feel left her. There was nothing malicious in what he'd done. He was a man who loved his incapacitated, y'all know the word. I'll put it on the screen, but I know it. Sister so much that he'd do whatever was necessary to help her. It's what Etta had done when her mother was ill. Those months of treatments and seeing that they weren't working had been the worst time of her life. After the funeral, she thought about returning to school, but Alicia and her father had needed her too much. A house of my own, Etta said. How about something Italian? 2 stories, wraparound porch? Alice and I can sit on it and drink iced tea. For a moment, there was such gratitude in his eyes that it hurt her to see it. What about you? She asked. It seems rather drastic to marry someone just to get a housekeeper and nursemaid. What about love and companionship, children, and, she shrugged, and affection? I'd be a terrible husband. I have a bad temper and I never come home when I should. Thanks for being honest. I'm saying though, if people was more honest. Alice said only a saint would marry me, but if I ever find a husband for her, she can have children. That's why I agreed to you. Right. As you and Cornelia said, I'm an old and plain spinster, too educated for any man to want me, fit only to be a cook and a cleaner. She wasn't angry. It was too much like what had been said to her many times before, but not so blatantly. Lester had introduced her to a few men, and Alicia had insisted she meet 3 unmarried doctors, but none of them had appealed to her. I didn't mean to upset you. I thought Alice explained things to you. She probably did, Etta said, and I probably agreed. So you and I are to be friends with no benefits. He looked affronted. A home, meals, comfort. No one will mistreat you or love me, she thought. She didn't say it, but it was in her eyes. He gave her a hard look. What about you? What's so good about your life that you agreed to marry a man you never met? That was much too good of a question, and is. Suddenly, she had all of this dream she could bear. She pinched herself inside her elbow where it would hurt the most. It wasn't easy to do through the long sleeves of her dress, but she managed. He looked at her in surprise. Just trying to wake up. This isn't a dream I want to continue. Dream? What do you mean? She stood. All of this, you, the mud house, even the peaches, are just in my dream. And right now, I don't like it. I'm not an old, useless spinster. In my time, that word isn't used. Besides, women like to postpone marriage and kids until their career is established. She saw that this was making things worse. His face showed that he didn't understand what she was saying. He seemed to be drawn into himself. Wasn't this a time period where men could lock away wives for being insane? With the way her dream was going, she could imagine being put in a straitjacket. This is Kansas, she said. If it worked for Dorothy, maybe it'll work for me. I'm laughing because I've been thinking the same thing the whole time. She closed her eyes, clicked the heels of her high top leather shoes she had on. There is no place like home. There is no place like home. She opened one eye. He was looking at her like she was crazy. She closed her eyes. There's no place like home. When nothing happened, she sat down. Okay, I got it. This dream ends when it's supposed to, and there's nothing I can do about it. She turned to him and thought, this is a marriage of necessity. There's no love, no kids. Freddie and her compatriots get all the fun while old me gets the work. This is a job. Like with Lester, this man is younger and a great deal better looking than Lester, but he's off limits. She held out her hand to shake his. I guess we have a deal. I take care of your life and you give me food and shelter. He looked perplexed, obviously not understanding why she didn't seem happy with that. He took her hand, shook it once, then dropped it. Henrietta, he said. Aye. It's Etta. And should I call you Mr. Lawton? She saw anger flash in his eyes. It looked like she pushed him too far. Yeah, sure, that would be good. He stood up. Let's go to Alice, and I can turn you over to her. Etta wished she hadn't made him angry, but at the same time, he'd hurt her, and she was glad to get back at him. He lifted her onto the wagon, but this time it was more of a toss. He drove fast, seemed to hit all the rocks and holes, but never once asked how she was doing. As for Etta, she would have died before she asked him to slow down. She held onto the sides of the seats and repressed grunts and groans while being slammed about. They rode, not speaking to each other. Etta kept telling herself she was actually at Henry's beautiful home in a warm, cozy bed, and none of this was happening. But right now, the bruises and the muscle aches seemed very real. A house came into view. There was a barn nearby, and men with horses stopped to stare at them. Etta would like to meet them. Maybe there were people she knew in real life. But he pulled to the front of the house. It was a nice place, 2 stories with a steep roof, 2 chimneys, and 3 doormen. The front had a long porch with 5 square columns. The yard in front of the house was messy and weedy. Although the house looked to be in good repair, it had an air of abandonment that Etta thought was rather sad. To the left was a low addition with big windows, and she could see pretty floral curtains inside. Was this the part that was designed by Cornelia? Alice prison? He swung her down from the wagon, but he didn't look at her. Alice is in there, he said, then led the horses and wagon away. At the end of the lower part of the house was a door. Etta picked up her heavy skirt and the underlying petticoats and made her way through knee-deep weeds to the door. When it stuck, she knew it wasn't used very often. She pushed it open and went inside. To her right was a bedroom, and inside was a very pretty bed. It was a French design with wooden carvings of swags of vine and a bow in the middle. In the corner was an easel with a very nice watercolor landscape on it. At least it's a beautiful prison, she muttered. There were other rooms, but she wasn't interested in them because at the end of the hall was a wide glassed-in area. Tropical plants were along the edges, palms, orchids, bromeliads. It was like a botanical garden that a person would pay to see. To the side was a young woman. She had on a ruffled dress of light blue, the square neck quite low. Her dark hair was piled prettily on top of her head. She was bent over a wooden embroidered frame and sewing on a sampler. I need not to sell my soul to buy bliss, it read. Below that was an author's name, Charlotte Bronte, but the final E hadn't yet been sewn. She looked up and saw Etta. You've come at last, she stood up. She was Alicia. It was Etta's sister face, body, and voice. The young woman took a step and Etta saw her limp. She picked up a silver-top cane and took a few more steps. Alicia? Etta whispered, and her eyes filled with tears. Her sister was always ready to listen to people's problems, always had a solution. I've had the most awful dream. I've got married, but he says I'm old and ugly, and your parasol was cut, and... The woman let her cane fall to the floor, and she opened her arms. Come talk to me. Gratefully, Etta took a step forward. Then she woke up. That's the end of chapter 2. That was fun. It was a dream, and it was cool. It was cute. And the whole time I was thinking, Alice in Wonderland. Or I was thinking of, not Alice in Wonderland, I was thinking of Wizard of Oz, right? And then when it mentioned it in the book, I was like, okay, my thought pattern was on the same pattern. So that's it. I don't have too much to say about it. So I'm thinking it's just going to be going into historical kind of scenes and stuff like that. So we shall see. But there was one word that I did not know. There was another word that I did know, but it was hard to pronounce. But anyway, stay tuned for the definition video. Until next time, I shall see you, but don't leave yet. The definition video is after this. Bye for now. Welcome back to the definition portion. And the word that I do not know the definition of or knew how to pronounce is spelled Pubescent. And this is how it is pronounced.
Pubescent.
Pubescent. Okay, it's an adjective relating to or denoting a person at or approaching the age of puberty. And let me go back and go to the sentence that it was in. And the sentence was, then the real work begins, the third one said, and they all snickered like pubescent boys. Makes sense. Okay, and the word that I did know but was having trouble pronouncing it is spelled incapacitated. Incapacitated. Still have a problem. Let me just put it in so you can hear what I'm trying to say. Incapacitated. There we go. This is what I'm trying to pronounce.
Incapacitated.
Incapacitated. See? I knew it. But that's the end of the definition video. I shall see you in the next chapter. Bye for now.